Hello and welcome, my name's Helly25, and today we're in Spin Tire's Mud Runners, doing a new series called Can It Mud. In this series, we'll be determining whether or not the vehicle can mud. We'll start out with the game's default vehicles, and then we'll branch into modded vehicles later, or per request, depending on how well this series actually does in the sense of being liked. The only way I'll know it's liked is all those likes down below and comments suggesting new vehicles to test next. So, feel free to head on down and leave a comment, let me know which vehicle to do next, or leave a like and let me know that you actually like it. And I'll continue to do them. So for this test, we'll be in the proving grounds, because as of right now, I can't understand the modding tools, so I can't really make a custom map. It's a little more accurate, so because of that, there'll be the little bit of human error as a sense of leeway in the tests. For those tests, there'll be multiple phases covering different things around the proving grounds itself. Each phase will be timed, individually of course, so you can see exactly how well it got through that. For the vehicles themselves, during the phases, we'll be wanting to monitor the speeds in meters per second, because that determines what we turn on in the vehicle. As you can see, with this vehicle, it's equipped with differential lock and all wheels. So, if the vehicle is driving and it gets stuck, and it drops below 1 meter per second for longer than 5 seconds, we're going to turn on the all wheels, and that'll be 4 points against it. We'll be treating this essentially as golf in the sense of the points system. The lower the points, the better it did by default. And we'll be using the vehicles as default, which is why we won't be adding any additional items from the garage, except for one vehicle, and that'll be our rescue vehicle, but we'll cover that later in the video. So, back to the point system. Again, once we turn on all-wheel drive, which is after 5 seconds of being below 1 meter per second, if the vehicle is still below 1 meter per second for 5 seconds, we'll turn on differential lock. If after both of those are on, we'll attempt to winch something. If we're not able to winch, we'll reverse. Both winching and reversing have 3 attempts, separately, of course, for the entire phase of the test. If after 3 reverses and 3 winches, we'll call in the rescue vehicle, and we'll pull the vehicle through the rest of that phase, and then proceed on to the next phase. So, because we'll be off-roading, a very important rule of off-roading in real life is to have a buddy with you. Since this is a testing ground, we still need to essentially have a testing buddy, but it'll just be another vehicle. It is our DRON Mazzy by DRON MazzyRS. A link to the Steam Workshop item will be in the description below. The DRON Mazzy will be the only vehicle that has something from the garage. Since it'll be our rescue vehicle, it'll have the rescue equipment, or repair equipment, depending on however you wish to determine it. Since this will be the only way that it'll be going through the course anyways. As an exemplification of why it should be our rescue vehicle, we're going to run through the test and cover each of the phases. This vehicle is very capable of handling all of the phases and towing any other vehicle through each phase. We'll get to that later as well. So, the first phase, we'll turn on the vehicle and we'll bring the vehicle to about the edge of the cement here. We'll try and get the front tire to line up just about there. Again, portion of human error will cause these tests to not be exactly the same. We'll begin driving the test, and we'll take a right to show exactly how well it does in ruts. Again, each portion will be timed, and it'll show just how fast the vehicle can make it through the phase. I may come up with names for the phases later, but as of right now, we'll just go with the ruts phase. and that portion is completed once we meet the road again. We'll then continue on to the next phase. The next phase begins at this little bump, and it'll be once the tire reaches the top of the bump. Again, human error and eyesight may cause all these tests to start slightly different, but the front tire is our gauge for all the vehicles. We'll begin driving along, and we'll be covering how it goes over vehicles, or not vehicles, how it goes over trees, and how it goes over ruts. Bumps, I guess you could say, rather than ruts. We already did ruts. Ruts are down, bumps are up. Then we'll be covering this fielded portion until we reach this branch, and then the phase is completed. The next phase is the hill phase. So we'll bring the front tire to about the same side as the bush, because this bush is the only one that sits separately from everything else. All the other bushes kind of blend in with the other ones. Again, at the beginning of each phase, we'll make sure our differential lock and all wheels are off, as if this vehicle having differential lock always on and all wheels non-applicable. So those points will count against and for it. In the sense, it won't have all wheel on, but it'll have the 4 points for the differential lock. We'll then begin climbing the hill. Once we reach the top, we'll come to a complete stop, and then let it glide down the hill. The next phase starts at this tree, and we'll come to a complete stop, and then let go. It'll begin rolling down the hill. The down the hill portion is important because it shows whether or not the vehicle has hill control descent. Once we reach the road, the test portion is over. We then go into a change phase portion, in which we're just driving along here. I don't usually brake here because if we drive off the road, oh well. Just like that. And who says you can't have a little fun on a roundabout? The next portion will begin once the hill begins going down, so right about there. We'll then begin driving through the water. Then over these bumps, these branches, and then into this mud. Once we reach the road, with the first tire touching the road, that phase is completed. The next phase begins at the end of this little dirt rut here. We'll begin driving around the asphalted area until we reach the mud at the end. Once we reach the mud, then that portion of the test is completed. So right about there. This is a transitionary phase here. And then once we bring the front tire into the mud here, this is the last phase where we'll reset everything, differential lock and all wheels off. The vehicle will be going through the very middle, which is considerably the hardest line to take, but it's to show how the vehicle handles deep mud. And then we'll really meet the cement. That was the last phase of not the overall test, but of the portion of the test in which we turn off the differential lock and all wheels once we meet each objective. Or once we meet each phase, rather. For the next couple of phases, we'll have all wheels and differential lock on by default. So, the next phase begins here, once we crest the front wheel over this little bump on the left side. This portion of the test covers how the vehicle does going off-road but at high speeds and with little to no mud. Our intent is to stay close to the ditch on the left side but not go in it. And if we stray too far from the ditch to the right, I'll let go of the gas and correct the vehicle so it can go back towards it. Some of these vehicles are better at handling this off-road portion, so they'll lose traction relatively easily. This portion ends when we reach this tree. The next portion begins at this little lightened mound when we bring the front tire to it. Our intent is to drive directly across the water to see how well it does at water fording. Since there's no current, since this is just a little lake instead of a river, it's a little easier for most vehicles. And once we reach this top portion of the road, that phase is completed. That brings us to the last and final phase, which is over here. We'll line the front tire up with that rut. Make sure the vehicle is fully repaired and refueled. And this one has a different stipulation. We'll be doing it at night to show just exactly how well the lights actually do. We'll also throw it into only first gear, and then we'll ensure that our differential lock and all wheels are on. We'll then begin driving down the middle. What we'll want to be looking out for is the vehicle falling below 1 meter per second for longer than 5 seconds. So far so good, but that's why I selected the DRON Mazzy as my recovery vehicle, because it's one of the only vehicles that I could find that would be able to handle all of this and drag another vehicle along with it, while still meeting our stipulation of over 1 meter per second. The end of this phase happens once we get one tire to touch the pavement. Then we'll throw it back into automatic and bring it back to the starting area for its final assessment, really. So, that was the DRON Mazzy. A very good vehicle, I would say. One that I would personally vouch for if you ever need a vehicle that can rescue pretty much any vehicle at any point out of any situation. So much so, it's very good at river fording as well, because of its small stature and no need to actually breathe. So, as an example of why I would select it as my recovery vehicle, I'm going to show just exactly how much it can tow by using an E7429. Then, we're going to swap to it. We're going to add a fuel canister, fuel trailer, we're going to make sure that everything's filled up, because empty containers don't really do a lot for testing purposes. Oh. As you can see, it really weighs it down. We'll swap back to our DRON Mazzy. And we're going to tug this thing along with us. Oh, that's not what I wanted to grab. There we go. And then we'll want to set it to pull. So that way the vehicle itself is not assisting us in this. It's just the DRON Mazzy itself. It'll still steer just to make that easier, but that's so we're not essentially tugging a trailer with a trailer. As we can see, the DRON Mazzy is still maintaining over our minimum stipulation of 1 meters per second, with somewhat relative ease. So because we've reached below our minimum, this would be a point where we would actually turn on drive, so the vehicle can help us out a little. And once we reach a point where I feel that the DRON Mazzy can at least grip again, we'll turn to pull, and then we'll begin pulling again. Such a small little thing, pulling such a very large, overweight, and very heavy object. That's exactly why I selected it as the recovery vehicle, and somewhat as our baseline for these tests. I've been Hilly25. If you liked the video, please hit like and subscribe for later videos, and leave a comment below what you liked about it, and constructive criticism never hurts, so if there's something you don't like about it, let me know in the comments below. If you do like it, please hit the subscribe button, because if you show that you like it, I'll probably make more, and if you want more of these, the subscribe button is the best way to find out more. Anyways, that was a long sign off. I'm Hilly25, this has been Can It Mud, and the DRON Mazzy definitely can mud.